Imagine you or a loved one needs a life-saving medication.
Right.
And the formula for the cure has actually already been finalized. Like, it's done.
Wow.
Yeah, the software managing the clinical trials and the whole manufacturing process is fully written. But here's the kicker. You can't have the medication for another 6 months.
Let me guess. The paperwork.
Exactly. Not because the science isn't ready, but because the paperwork just isn't finished.
It sounds like a total bureaucratic nightmare, but, that scenario really represents the defining tension of modern medicine.
Yeah, it really does.
Because when a pharmaceutical company develops software, speed literally means getting a cure to patients sooner.
Right. Lives are on the line.
Exactly.
Right.
But speed, without absolute precision, introduces a level of risk that regulatory bodies like the FDA, they simply will not tolerate.
No, they definitely won't.
You cannot adopt the tech world's mantra of, move fast and break things when the thing you might break is patient safety.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping right into a fascinating article. This is from March 2026, written by Omer Simon.
Yep, the CEO of Validfor.
Right, and his piece is titled Integrating Validation into Agile Development, Bridging the Gap Between IT and QA. So, okay, let's unpack this because we are looking at how to combine two completely opposing worldviews here.
Very opposing.
Yeah. On one hand, you have the tech world's absolute favorite way of working, which is agile development. And then on the other hand, you have the pharmaceutical world's absolute non-negotiable requirement for safety, which is validation.
So our goal today for this deep dive is to really decode the mechanics of what I like to call safe speed.
Safe speed, I like that.
Right. We are going to examine the technological tools that make this possible, but honestly, more importantly, we have to look at the cultural shifts required.
Because tools aren't enough on their own.
Exactly. Giving two historically opposed teams a shiny new piece of software doesn't solve anything if they fundamentally misunderstand each other's core values.
Oh, totally. I mean, if you've ever worked in a corporate environment where two departments just seem to speak completely different languages, you know exactly what we're talking about here.
It's a classic struggle.
In the pharmaceutical industry, the culture clash between information technology, IT, and quality assurance QA is just legendary at this point.
It really is.
So let's start by looking at those two distinct languages.
Yeah, let's look at IT first. If you are developing software today, you are almost certainly using Agile methodology.
Pretty much the industry standard.
Right. And Agile is entirely built around the concept of speed and adaptability. You work in these short bursts called sprints.
Usually what, like 2 weeks long?
Yeah, usually 2 weeks. And you push out iterative releases. You're constantly testing, updating, and just reacting to new information.
Very dynamic.
Very dynamic. Highly fluid.
And then we have QA, quality assurance.
Right. And QA operates on a methodology called waterfall.
Which is not fluid.
No, it is the exact opposite of Agile. Waterfall is sequential, it's rigid, and it is deeply, deeply reliant on heavy documentation.
Like mountains of it.
Mountains. You do not move to step 2 until step 1 is flawlessly finalized, documented, and signed off by multiple stakeholders.
Wow.
Yeah, it is designed from the ground up to ensure absolute zero risk predictability.
To put this in perspective for anyone listening who hasn't worked directly in software development, imagine an aerospace engineering firm building a new jet.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Right, so IT operates like this elite pit crew. They want to build a plane, test the engine, swap out parts on the fly, and figure out the aerodynamics while they're literally taxiing down the runway.
Which is a great way to visualize the chaotic energy of Agile. QA in this scenario.
QA is the Federal Aviation Regulator standing on the tarmac.
Arms crossed.
Exactly. They are demanding a certified origin document for every single rivet used in the fuselage, an impact study for the windshield glass, and a finalized flight manual before the engine is even allowed to be turned on.
So the friction is just immediate.
Instantaneous. And according to the source material, the crux of this entire conflict really boils down to how these two departments define one simple word.
The word done.
Done. Yeah.
The definition of done is where this whole process traditionally breaks apart. I mean, think about the psychological reward system for a software developer.
Okay.
For IT, a feature is considered done when the code is written. It successfully performs the function it was designed to do, and it passes a peer review.
They wipe their hands, close the ticket in their tracking system, and move on to the next sprint.
Exactly. But for QA, writing the code is just the opening act.
Just the beginning.
Right. In the pharmaceutical industry, a feature is nowhere near done until it is fully validated.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning it has to be proven mathematically and procedurally to meet rigorous regulatory standards, complete with a locked audit trail that a federal regulator can follow like 5 years from now.
So because of these wildly different definitions, companies historically adopted this just terribly inefficient workflow.
Oh, the worst. They would let IT run their fast agile sprints for months, just building out all the software.
For having a great time.
Right. And then, at the very end of the project, IT would hand this massive complex pile of finished code over to QA and just say, okay, validate this.
Which is where that 6-month delay we talked about earlier comes from.
Exactly.
Okay, so if waiting until the end is what creates this massive bottleneck, the logical fix seems, I don't know, pretty obvious.
You would think.
Why not just validate the code the same day it's written?
Well, you've just hit on the first major solution outlined in the text. It's an industry concept known as shifting left.
Shifting left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you visualize a project timeline moving from left to right, so from the start of coding on the far left to the final release on the right.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Shifting left means taking those really heavy QA validation activities that usually sit way over on the far right and dragging them left.
Moving them earlier in the timeline?
Right. You move them right into the middle of the active development process.
So instead of validation being this agonizing, completely separate phase at the end of the year, it becomes a daily task within the Agile sprint itself.
Exactly.
The source emphasizes that validation lifecycle management has to move in parallel with code development.
That's the theory, yeah. Every time a developer builds a feature, there is a corresponding validation task happening simultaneously.
I have to push back on the reality of this, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a developer right now. Agile is supposed to be fast and fluid, right?
Right.
Let's say I'm coding, and I accidentally break a login protocol.
Happens all the time.
Exactly. And in Pharma, that touches GXP functionality, meaning the strict good practice regulations that govern food and drugs. If I break a GXP rule, I have to trigger a massive deviation management process, right?
Yes, you do. Deviation management is a highly formal process to document, investigate, and resolve any departure from an approved procedure.
Which sounds intense.
Oh, it requires root cause analysis, corrective actions. It is incredibly thorough.
Right. So if I have to stop my 2-week Agile sprint to conduct a formal deviation management investigation every single time a bug pops up, haven't we just ruined the sprint?
It definitely slows things down.
We haven't eliminated the bottleneck. We've just crammed the bottleneck into the daily workflow.
That is a highly perceptive critique, and honestly, it is the exact pitfall Omar Simon warns about in the article.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you take traditional manual waterfall documentation, so spreadsheets, Word documents, manual ink signatures, and to jam all of that into a 2-week Agile sprint,
It's going to break.
the sprint will instantly collapse under the weight of the paperwork.
Because humans just can't track shifting variables that fast.
No, we really can't. Let's look at the mechanical reality of what actually happens. Agile is iterative, which means the foundational requirements of the software change constantly based on user feedback.
Right, you're always tweaking it.
So imagine a fundamental user requirement changes in Sprint 3. The developer updates the code quickly and moves on to the next thing.
Boom, done.
But how do you ensure that the corresponding validation test case, which, by the way, might not be scheduled for execution until Sprint 5, actually reflects that change?
Man. If you're relying on human memory or just like static spreadsheets, someone has to remember to go find that specific document in a shared folder somewhere and update it manually.
Yep.
And in the chaos of an Agile workflow, those manual links are going to break.
They break constantly. The only way shifting left actually works without causing that internal bottleneck you just described is by implementing what we call a traceability web.
A traceability web.
Yeah, it's a dynamic, multi-dimensional database. Inside this system, requirement A is inextricably linked to risk B, which is tied directly to test case C.
So it's not a static document. It's like a live ecosystem.
Exactly.
If I pull on one thread, say, I alter a line of code in Sprint 3, the web automatically tugs on the connected test case in Sprint 5 and flags it for an update without a human having to even remember the connection.
The system inherently understands the causality of the whole project.
That's incredible.
It is. But as we established, tracking a 10,000 node map of interconnected dependencies in real time is way beyond human capability.
Right.
Which means we have to bring in specialized technology to automate both the execution of the tests and the tracking of the evidence.
Which means we are moving past the theoretical and getting into the heavy machinery of this deep dive.
Let's do it.
How do you actually automate compliance in an industry where the FDA might literally knock on your door tomorrow?
Well, the pharmaceutical industry is in the midst of a massive digital evolution right now. They are finally ditching manual, paper-based test scripts entirely.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
That physical paper binders were still being used for this given the stakes.
I know, it sounds crazy. But for decades, it was literally the only way to ensure the physical signatures and concrete audit trails that regulators demanded.
Oh, that makes sense.
But today, the industry is moving to continuous integration and continuous deployment. You'll usually hear this called CI/CD pipelines.
Okay, let's unpack that pipeline mechanism for a second because it's crucial. Continuous integration means that every time a developer commits a new piece of code to the central repository, an automated system immediately compiles it and runs foundational checks.
Right.
Like, no human hands are moving the files around.
None. And continuous deployment takes it a step further. Once the code passes those initial checks, the pipeline automatically pushes it to a staging environment.
Okay.
And here's where the real validation magic happens. Digital test management tools execute the required validation tests automatically the very second that new build is deployed.
Wow. So instead of a QA professional manually running through a 50-point checklist on their screen, the system just tests itself.
Exactly.
And it instantly generates what the article calls objective evidence. Basically, system-generated logs that prove the software works as intended.
It's unalterable proof, generated at the exact speed of the software itself.
That's huge.
But while automated pipelines are powerful, the article highlights a technology that takes this to an entirely different level.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes. Specifically, the integration of Validfor AI into the development pipeline.
When I was reading the source material on Validfor AI, the best way I could visualize it was like a massive digital domino setup.
Okay, dominoes.
Yeah. Traditional testing is like someone knocking over the first domino and just standing there watching to see which ones fall at the end of the table.
Right, hoping for the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the AI maps out exactly how every single line of code touches the next before anything is even pushed. So when a developer changes one tiny function, the AI instantly parses the entire dependency tree and highlights the exact path of dominoes that will be affected.
Yes. What's fascinating here is how it maps historical validation data against new code commits.
Okay.
The AI isn't just reacting to errors after they happen, it is actually predicting which validation tests are required based on the specific nature of the code change.
So it instantly tells the developer, hey, because you changed the login protocol just now, you need to rerun these 3 exact safety tests from 2 years ago.
Precisely. And look at how elegantly that solves the culture clash we discussed at the very beginning.
Oh, right.
The AI acts as the ultimate bridge between IT and QA. For the developer in IT, the AI gives them exactly what they crave, which is uninterrupted speed.
They don't have to stop and guess what tests to run.
Nope. Or wait 3 weeks for QA to review their code. The AI tells them instantly, allowing them to iterate safely.
And for the QA manager, the AI gives them algorithmic assurance.
Exactly.
They have mathematical proof that no requirement is slipping through the cracks. They get their ironclad compliance without having to play the role of the bottleneck.
It's a brilliant technological solution.
It really is.
However, the author, Omer Simon, emphasizes a very crucial warning here.
There's always a catch.
Always. You can buy the most sophisticated digital test management tools in the world. You can implement state-of-the-art Validfor AI.
Yeah.
You can build an elegant, fully automated CI/CD pipeline. But all of that technology will completely fail if the humans operating it haven't changed their underlying mindset.
Because you can't just install a software update to fix human resentment.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final and honestly perhaps the most challenging aspect of our deep dive today. The cultural shift.
The human element.
Right. Integrating validation into Agile isn't just an IT infrastructure project. It requires deep, sometimes really uncomfortable compromises from both departments.
He does. Let's start with the developers in IT.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier that developers love building features, but they historically loathe writing documentation.
It feels like busy work to them.
Totally. It feels like overhead that just distracts them from the real job of writing elegant code.
But the text makes a very hard-hitting point here. ET needs to radically accept a core truth of the pharmaceutical industry. Documentation is not overhead. It is the actual product.
In pharma, there is a saying, if it isn't documented, it's a rumor.
A rumor. Wow.
Yeah. You could build a piece of software that flawlessly manages a groundbreaking clinical trial. But if you cannot procedurally prove to a regulator exactly how and why it works through rigorous, unbroken documentation,
It's useless.
that software is legally worthless. You cannot deploy it. The code and the documentation are inseparable halves of the exact same product.
That's a huge shift.
IT has to internalize that reality. They have to treat the generation of objective evidence with the exact same reverence they treat their code.
That is a massive paradigm shift for a developer who's used to the Silicon Valley mindset.
It really is.
But QA doesn't get a free pass here either.
No, they don't.
What is a required compromise from quality assurance?
QA has to let go of their rigid adherence to waterfall perfectionism.
Which is hard for them.
Very hard. They have to embrace the Agile philosophy that testing smaller chunks of code continuously, even if the whole system isn't finished yet, is actually a safer and more efficient way to build a robust system. They have to stop demanding that everything be perfect before moving forward, and instead they need to trust the iterative process of risk management.
And when both sides actually embrace this cultural mindset shift, something amazing happens.
Yeah.
The article uses a specific phrase here that I think just completely redefines the dynamic.
I know exactly the phrase you mean.
Yeah. When QA successfully embeds these automated validation tools into the Agile workflow, they transition from being known as the Department of No to becoming the Department of Safe Speed.
The Department of Safe Speed, it reframes the entire identity of the compliance team.
It really does. I mean, think about it. Nobody wants to be the Department of No in their company.
Nobody.
Nobody wakes up in the morning excited to go to work and completely block their colleagues' progress.
No, QA professionals are there for a noble reason,
Right,
to protect patients.
Right.
But the traditional manual waterfall system structurally forced them to act like roadblocks.
It wasn't their fault. It was the system.
Exactly. Reframing a strict compliance role into an active enablement role, a department that uses AI and continuous pipelines to help the company innovate faster while staying completely safe, that is incredibly empowering for the people actually doing the work.
It's a lesson that extends far beyond just software development or pharmaceuticals, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Anytime you have a corporate ecosystem where rapid innovation and strict regulation are forced to coexist, you usually find this bitter rivalry.
Wise.
But by leveraging technology to shift the regulatory burden directly into the active workflow, you align those opposing forces. You turn historical adversaries into functional partners.
True.
So let's take a step back and just look at the journey we've been on today.
Okay.
We started by examining a massive, kind of invisible collision in the pharmaceutical industry. This desperate need for agile speed crashing right into the immovable, heavily documented wall of waterfall validation.
And we explored how waiting until the end of a project to validate creates an impossible bottleneck, which forces a complete rethinking of the project timeline.
Which naturally led us to the logical solution shifting left. Bring those validation tasks directly into the daily development sprints.
Right. But then we quickly realized that human beings simply cannot manage the dynamic, constantly shifting web of traceability required to do that manually.
Which is why the industry is turning to automated CI/CD pipelines and the predictive power of tools like Validfor AI.
Yes, technology that analyzes code changes in real time, instantly parsing dependency trees to predict exactly which tests are required and automatically generating that objective evidence.
But the ultimate takeaway, really, the real secret sauce of this whole deep dive is that none of this technology works without a total cultural reboot.
Absolutely none of it.
IT accepting that documentation is the product, and QA evolving from the Department of No to the Department of Safe Speed.
It's essential.
Whether you are managing a tech team, working in compliance, or just trying to navigate competing priorities in your own workplace. There is a really profound lesson here about using integrated processes to bridge fundamental divides.
It proves that speed and safety do not have to be mutually exclusive. If you design the system correctly from the ground up, they actually reinforce each other.
Now, before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to ponder.
Oh, I love these.
Something that builds on the incredible potential of the AI predictive testing we discussed today.
The integration of AI into compliance really opens up an entirely new set of long-term questions.
It really does. Think about this scenario. If AI becomes so incredibly advanced that it can perfectly predict, map, and execute every single compliance test needed, the exact second a developer writes a line of code, what happens to the concept of human accountability?
That's a heavy question.
Right. We're talking about the pharmaceutical industry where actual human lives are on the line. If the machine is doing all the checking and generating all the objective evidence, does the traditional human QA inspector eventually become obsolete?
Or do they simply evolve into a totally new role, spending their days not auditing the software, but auditing the AI itself?
Auditing the AI. That is the next great frontier for the industry. Who validates the
Who
validator?
validates the validator? Wow.
It's a fascinating puzzle, and one that every regulated industry will have to face very soon. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you some powerful new insights into how the most critical industries in the world are balancing the bleeding edge of innovation with the absolute necessity of safety. Keep questioning the processes around you, and as always, stay curious.